Claudio, our driver. Claudio is Claudio. I don't know if Anna Maria. We've got two guides working for us. There's Anna Maria and Anne Marie. They're both Dutch, and I get confused between the two names. Anna Maria, you had yesterday. I don't know if she pointed out that our driver is originally from Galicia. He is Gallego. Therefore, he's not majorero or anything in any case. So nobody was going to live in Fuerteventura and be a farmer. You had to live in Fuerteventura and be something else. And if the rains happen to come, supplement your income with a little bit of farming. So 1975, population of the island 17,000 inhabitants. Now the population of the island, 1st of January 2014, was just over 110,000 inhabitants. So you can see how many people have come here as a result of all the jobs inspired by the tourism. I say inspired by the tourism. Not everybody works in tourism. But that is the inspiration of the economy of the island. For instance, the driver's not from here, but he works in tourism. I'm not from here, but I work in tourism. The driver has a car, I've got something that I call a car. Some folk call it scrap metal. And therefore there are people working as garage mechanics. They're not working in tourism. But if you take away the tourism workers and the tourism workers' cars, you also take away the garage mechanics work. The old cemetery of Puerto del Rosario is there on the left, like old premises. That's the old one, no longer used. Cemeteries. I don't want to work in French. The French, more than any other nationality, always ask, where are the cemeteries? Why are the French so obsessed with cemeteries? I suppose you could say I'm trilingual. I've got Spanish, French and English. There's other guys that are better than me and they're quadrilingual who speak 5 languages, but I work in French and English and Spanish. And I know other guys that work in French and Italian, or French and German, or French and Dutch. And we all agree, the French ask that question. Where are the cemeteries? Now, I can't tell you why the French are more obsessed with it, but the reason that they rarely see them is a word basically meaning to gather together. So an alcohol is a way of gathering water when it drains off the hills on our right to drain into the fields for agriculture. The field has a wall of earth around the field, and it lets water drain into the field. It gathers the water in the field, but it can't drain out. And so they named this museum after that system. And here it is, these old houses that we have, 2 on the left and 4 on the right. We're parked by the reception house. Just have a quick word with that.
Doesn't matter.
Right, what we will do is, it's always more practical. I found that we're not going to bother too much with houses numbers 2 and 3. We're going to go straight to house number 4, which is one of the best houses I find. I'll explain a bit about what is typical and traditional about these styles of houses. Houses 5 and 6 have got some craft workers working in there. Not all of them, the rooms have got craft workers, but those that haven't have got a display of typical crafts of the island. And when we're finished all that, we'll come back to where we're starting here, house number 1, which is the reception, where there will be a little tasting of cheese and honey rum. Oh. Okay. So I just need to add a bit of paperwork in and let them know we're here so they can get the cheese and the honey rum prepared for us. So as you're making your way off the bus, I'll just hand in the paperwork and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, see you here in a minute. Just looking over the roof of this first building, looking over the roof of it, there's another white building directly behind it, which has actually got 6 windows. That was the political prison in the Franco regime.
Really?
Yep, he had a prison on Fuerteventura for getting rid of troublemakers, homosexuals, and anybody he didn't like. That was the prison.
Which building?
It's, well, when we get a little higher up, you'll be able to see it. You see this first white building?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is on 300 metres in front of us. Right, behind that, about 3/4 of a mile away. Flat roof, 6 windows. Yep, 6 small windows.
Grey, white.
Yeah.
That's it. You can only, you can't see the bottom of it because of the roof of this first house.
Yeah.
That's the one that was Franco.
It's not very big though. Did you not have very many?
Well, he had prisons elsewhere. Well, this wasn't his only one. Right, come with me. We're going in this direction.
Yeah.
Did you see where we were yesterday? Up there on the top? The Moro Veloso. You can just see it up there. Yeah,
See the bald haystack on the left? It's a grain store, basically. These things are hollow. The traditional field of Fuerteventura has that wall of earth around it to gather water, to create a pool of water when the rains do come. Water will drain off the surrounding hillsides and landscape into the field. A pool of water forms. It might take a few days before the water is filtered into the soil. That's why in the past they grew so many cereals in Fuerteventura. That was what their agricultural economy was based on. Mostly wheat, a bit of barley, some rye, a reasonable amount of maize as well. For the simple reason that when the ground is wet, those types of things will germinate and grow quickly without needing a great deal more rain. But think of the rainfall figures I just gave you on the coach. The wet winter was a good winter for rains. They would have had a really big harvest in the past, so big that they would have exported a good proportion of it to other Canary Islands, to Madeira, and one or two regions of Spain as well. And with the money that they earned from that, they would then be able to buy quite a lot of other things that were totally impossible to grow on Fuerteventura. Then that winter was followed by a winter of 14.5 millimetres of rain. There would have been absolutely no harvest at all that winter. So therefore, the proportion of the previous winter's harvest that they put in the grain stores like this would have been consumed. They're made out of mud and grass, and they're pretty good, pretty airtight, pretty watertight. They do protect the grain for quite a long time against problems of damp and insects. So that's where that winter of 14.5 millimetres of rain is when the grain stores would come into use. They'd have stored the grain in that, they would have eaten a lot of that. That was followed by a winter of 70 millimetres of rain, where there'd have been a small harvest, maybe just about enough to feed themselves, but that would be it. No luxuries, no possibility of selling any of it. And then followed by the last winter with 44 millimetres of rain, and there would have been next to no harvest. So what were they going to do then? There'd have been nothing left in the grain stores by then. There wouldn't have been anything of a harvest for the islanders either. So what was the choices? There were two choices: stay and die, literally die, or emigrate. And that's why the way of life of the Canaries has always, and particularly Fuerteventura, has always been dominated by emigration, poverty, just simply due to the hardships of these islands. There was that statue of the emigrant along the seafront of Puerto del Rosario because it played such a role here. Yes, this is an aloe vera plant. I'm only aware of 4 industrial factories on Fuerteventura, and all 4 of them make aloe vera products. It has medicinal benefits. The leaves contain a jelly, and the jelly it's a succulent plant. Succulent plants live in desert parts of the world, and they hold a lot of water. That is how they survive long periods of drought. I've got aloe vera plants in my garden which have not been irrigated for 10 years, and they still are alive. I mean, they're not as healthy looking as these, but they're not dead either. But they've had absolutely no irrigation for 10 years. There's a jelly on the inside which is 70% water content. The other 30% is a mixture of about 200 different amino acids, vitamins, minerals and other chemicals which have got all sorts of medicinal benefits and quite often used in the world of cosmetics as well. Principally it's got anaesthetic effects, anti-inflammatory effects, it stimulates the growth of new skin cells as well. That's why it's quite often used for treatment of burns. It's really good for treatment of burns. It's good for treatment of allergic reactions in the skin. And some people drink it as well. It tastes absolutely foul.
It's supposed to be good for slimming.
I say suppose.
This is it. It's
Well,
supposed to be
it is supposedly good for the stomach. I've never heard that it's actually good for slimming, but it's good for the
It's
stomach.
so horrible, you see, you don't want to eat anything after that.
It's native to northern Africa, but it seems to have arrived in Fuerteventura many centuries ago, going back maybe to the 15th century when the island was conquered. And so therefore it's been long cultivated by the islanders, and it's only in the last 10 or 15 years they've realised the economic possibilities of cultivating it. There's quite a lot of different members of the same family. These are aloe vera, but if you look back behind us to where you've got similar types of plants which are much larger, and the flowers are up to 4 meters high, they look like trees, but they're not the trees, they're the flowers of another plant that's in the same family. They're sisal plants. The leaves of aloe vera contain the jelly. Sisal leaves are certainly wet and moist, but they don't contain jelly. They're very fibrous. Sisal fibres twisted together make sisal ropes, which are very popular in shipping because they don't corrode as easily in salt water as many other materials do, and they have the nice effect of stretching nicely without actually snapping. And there's another member of the family called the blue agave, which in Mexico is used for making a drink. Tequila. Tequila's made from the blue agave, and I have read, although I've never tried it, that you can make a similar type of liqueur from the sisal plants in Fuerteventura. Nobody does it, but it is theoretically possible. The trees, the flowers, they use them in the houses of Fuerteventura in December. Christmas trees. Last weekend of August, the wind stopped and we've had hardly any wind since then. Normally it's not quite as abrupt as that. However, the winds come in from that direction. They can be pretty strong, so the traditional house takes into account the strength and the direction of the wind. Most houses are built in an L shape or a U shape in the case of this house. If it's a big enough one, it might be an O-shaped house as well, so that the patio is built on the downwind side, and the building mostly backs on to the wind. Therefore, the patio is protected from the wind. The doors and windows, they're also on the downwind side of the building, so that whenever you open a door or a window, there's not a blast of air coming straight in. The people were building their own houses. There was no money available for paying other people to build their houses, and therefore they would stick with the simplest architectural styles. If you're in a city and there's a lack of space, there's a logic to building up into the heavens, of course, multi-storey buildings. But in Fuerteventura, there was never any shortage of space, so they could spread out as far as they liked. And the engineering behind multi-storey buildings is somewhat more complicated as well. Therefore, generally single-storey buildings. If somebody had a bit more money, like the mill owners of Bradford wanted their mill chimney to be taller than any other mill owner's chimney, somebody with a bit more money here might want to have just one part of the building with a second floor to it, such as we see across here. So the owner of this house did have a bit more money than others. Where did that money come from? It was because the owner of this house possessed a tahona. It's in that room there. A tahona is an animal-powered mill for grinding the grain. The grain was so important in the past. They needed mills. There's a lot of windmills on the island, but times of year when there was not much wind and you needed to grind large amounts of the grain, you needed some way of doing it. So a tahona, usually powered by a donkey, would be used, and the other people of the village would have to pay the owner. use of Tahona. The water supply might come from maybe wells somewhere in the area, but they would also take what water was provided by nature. All the rain that's falling on the landscape behind us is going to drain down due to gravity. You see there's that hole in the bottom of the wall at the back of the patio. They would build up little piles of stones and mud to guide all the water draining when we do get the torrential rain. It doesn't happen often, but it is really torrential rain. The ground doesn't absorb that water. It all drains downhill. So they would guide that water through that little hole in the back of the wall there, across the patio, and into the water tank. And this is a water tank here for storing it. It goes down several meters into the ground to keep the water cool, therefore it will not evaporate off particularly quickly. There's some water which would be for today's use here, although this has been here for quite a long time, hence it's gone stagnant. And that's why there's lots of mosquito larvae in it. If you look into it, you can see the mosquito larvae that are in there. You would also get the same larvae reproducing in the water tank as well. However, there's a lot of lime kilns on Fuerteventura. We'll see some when we get to El Cotillo, burning down this white rock here, which is called caliche. It's calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate is basically lime. And the lime was converted into various products, including disinfectant. And you could throw a few drops of disinfectant in every day, strong enough to stop it going stagnant, to stop the insect life from breeding in it, but you never put in so much that it became poisonous for human consumption. That water might then need to be filtered. So if you go into that room there, you will find that there is a hollowed out stone. I think it's on the left hand side as you walk in. It's made out of a type of stone which is permeable. So you pour in the water into the stone and the water filters through the stone. But anything like dust or larvae or anything like that that's in the water don't filter through it. So it's drinking water when it drips out at the bottom. There's actually 6 houses. Although the reception house is number 1. Number 2 is across there. We didn't bother with that. Number 3 is over that way, which is not the most exciting of the houses. I like this one here for it's a good example of what a traditional house is like, made out of simple materials. You see, it's just rough-hewn rock held together with mud. The roofs are just mud and grass. This is number 4. Going out of this back door here, turning to the left, there's numbers 5 and 6. And in numbers 5 and 6 we've got several types of craft workers and crafts on display. The traditional crafts of Fuerteventura are particularly palm leaf work using the leaves of the palm trees. Embroidery. They did grow cotton in the Canary Islands in the past. Nowadays they import the materials, but there's still a strong tradition of embroidery on all of the Canary Islands, and there's usually a lady working in the embroidery room there, showing off the drawn thread work, which is the traditional style in Fuerteventura. There's also, when they did have money to buy goods from elsewhere, a lot of tin goods would come in. The tin worker is not there at the moment, but they do have, there was a tradition in the past of recycling the tin for making into other materials. And there's one room there which has got things made out of recycled tin. They've got wood carver, no forest in Fuerteventura, but plenty of the Western Canary Islands are wetter, greener, and they are forested, and they could bring in wood from other Canary Islands. A stonemason, making all sorts of stone implements, like the plant pots that we have here. This red stone here actually comes from a volcanic crater, which is just down there. You can't see it from here, but down there there's a red mountain, and that red stone comes from there. And 1 or 2 other crafts as well. So what I would suggest is spend the next 20 minutes or so having a look around here and look at the other rooms, and then back to where we started. And there's a honey, rum and cheese. There's toilets back there as well. We should be going, I think. It's a nice place, isn't it?
Yeah. But you can see the roofs are different.
Oh, that's the good thing about the nice thick walls and lack of windows.
Are we actually in the village of Tafir?
Yeah.
This is all part of
that's an inhabited house. There's other houses inhabited over there.
Oh, it's definitely here.
A rural village where it's really spread out. I mean, a very low population but occupying a large space. And it's same in my house. It's same in my village. Except in my house, there's 2 blocks.
are indeed, yes.
This is the comparative Barcelo moorland.
Yeah.
So when do they harvest the olives? When?
Right now.
Right now.
Right now, yes. They might have already. No, the trees don't tend to give off olives every single year. I've got trees in my garden, and some of them this year have given off a few, and others haven't. So these, they might have already harvested them, or they might not have had any. I don't understand why some of my trees don't give olives off every year.
There's another of those false pepper trees. This is another one, isn't it? It's one of those false pepper trees. Feel it. Smell. Oh yes, it's strong, isn't it? Keith, did you? This is the false pepper.
Mm-hmm.
Have a smell.
Yes.
But rub it in your fingers. Look.
Okay. Mm.
Yeah. And another pomegranate.
Can't see, what is that? Is it sheep? And one head goat. So it could be sheep. Yeah.
Smell this. Touch it and then slow
However,
down.
we are investing in private pensions, donations.
We're going to drive shortly past a crater which is known as Montagna Quemada, Burnt Mountain. It's a volcanic crater only 50,000 years old. Now, I've just been talking in terms of millions and tens of millions of years old. So something that's only 50,000 years old, it could be regarded as being quite young. We'll go past it in a minute. And on the side of the volcano, there's a statue of a man called Miguel de Unamuno. Miguel de Unamuno was a writer, poet, philosopher from the end of the 19th century and the first decades of the 20th century. Vice-Chancellor of the University of Salamanca in 1923, when the first military dictatorship in Spain started up in the 20th century under General Primo de Rivera. Now, he was vehemently opposed to that military dictatorship. He was a public employee. He was talking against the political order of the time, and that was dangerous. He was arrested and he was sent in exile to Fuerteventura. Well, this was an ideal place for getting rid of troublemakers. What trouble could they cause here? Remember, in the past there were no telecommunications. There were no people of great importance. All this island was an island of a few thousand illiterate peasant goat herders. That's why the Franco regime had their military prison, their political prison here. Troublemakers couldn't cause any trouble when they were in Fuerteventura, isolated from the rest of the world. So Miguel de Unamuno, there's the statue of him, away on the left, at the foot of that mountain, Burnt Mountain, Montagna Quemada, arrived at what he described as being the end of the world. That was one of his polite descriptions. He had some impolite ones as well. However, after only 4 months in exile on the island, to everybody's surprise, he was given a pardon and released. He wanted to continue the fight against that dictatorship. It would be less dangerous to do so from outside the country. He fled to France, to Paris, and in Paris he wrote a small book entitled From Fuerteventura to Paris. And in this book he gave a description of his time in Fuerteventura and how the way of life, the peace, the tranquility, had allowed him to form a new philosophy, a form of existentialism to get him through the rest of his life. By then, to give you one of his more famous and more comprehensible descriptions of this island, he described this island in his poetry as being an oasis in the middle of civilization's desert. Right, that might seem a little heavy for this time of the day, but give it a few minutes, wait for that honey rum to kick in. By then you'll be feeling a lot more philosophical. You'll be pleased to know that in half an hour we'll be starting a discussion group on the political and philosophical teachings of Miguel de Unamuno.
Good, good.
Who thought that this was an oasis in the middle of civilization's desert. He never came back to the island, but he never stopped talking and writing about the island. What he wrote is still studied by academics nowadays. By the 1970s, the island authorities wanted to pay homage to this man. They had that statue made of him. Where should they put it? In the 4 months he was in exile on the island, he passed a comment that if he were to die in exile on the island, he wished to be buried at the foot of that mountain. He didn't die on the island, he's not buried there. But that's why they chose that place for putting the statue in homage to him. And in 1931, the dictatorship of Primo de Rivera finished. He could safely return to Spain. He went back to Salamanca, where he resumed his duties. He actually died after an argument with one of General Franco's cohorts. That is where he is buried. But after his return to Salamanca, he did say that wherever he may die, wherever his body may be laid to rest, that his spirit would always be in Fuerteventura. Now, this mountain behind us to the left is called Mount Tindaya, next to the village of Tindaya. That mountain is protected by the Canary's government. Protected for its geological origins and its archaeological values. That mountain is a magma chamber of an ancient volcano, with everything above and around it having been eroded away. It's estimated that maybe it's about 20 million years old. The island appeared out of the sea 30 to 23 million years old, but it's been exposed only after many millions of years of erosion. It was also a sacred mountain to the Majos. The Majos were the first human inhabitants of Fuerteventura. The first human inhabitants were old Berber tribes of northern Africa. They came here a few centuries before the birth of Christ. We can accurately refer to them as the Aborigines of the Canary Islands. I know that we most usually use the word Aborigine as referring to those of Australia. That's because they're the most famous ones in the world. The word Aborigine is dictionary defined as the original inhabitants of an area before new colonizers arrived. They had different names for themselves on different islands in the Canaries. On this island they called themselves the Majos, from where we get the word majorero, meaning somebody or something of Fuerteventura. And that mountain was a sacred mountain for the Majos. There are carvings on the top of the mountain in the shape of pairs of feet. A rather square looking pair of feet, but that symbol of a square looking pair of feet is carved more than 100 times on the top of that one mountain there. It's been given the nickname of the podomorph symbol, from the Greek words for the shape of feet. Actually, they keep quiet about the fact that just 1 or 2 podomorphs have been found in Lanzarote, 1 or 2 have been found in Gran Canaria, a few have been found in the Atlas Mountains of northern Africa, from whence certain Berber tribes originated, but the Aborigine civilizations of these islands came from the Berber tribes of northern Africa. But without doubt, the most famous podomorphs of the world are those of Mount Tindaya in Fuerteventura. And if I quickly dig out my iPad, I've lost it. No, here it is. My photos section. Hang on, get to it. I have a photo of it. How long was it therefore left in the hands of the military leader of Fuerteventura, who took on the role of lord of the island? He wasn't entitled to it, but he was the only person here who actually did have any power and wealth. The colonel was the leader of the military of Fuerteventura, and one of the colonels of Fuerteventura had built a building in keeping with the status of the lord of Fuerteventura. It's in front of us as we turn the corner. It's a building typical of the aristocracy style of building of southern Spain, and you find a few of these similar houses in other Canary Islands as well. All built around a patio, military touch with the military style turrets either side of the building. The wooden balconies on the second floor, very typical of southern Spain and Canarian architecture. There are claimed to be 365 windows in the building, one for each day of the year. It's a popular claim. I've been in there many times, but I've never mounted a challenge to actually, or embraced the challenge to count how many doors and windows it has. And it's known as the House of the Colonels. I've been on the island 22 years. For the first 18 years it was just closed up and you couldn't get in. About 4 years ago the Canaries government bought the building from the private owners and they renovated it, and it has in the last 2-3 years now been open for visits. It's not on our itinerary today. Don't really have time for making a visit to it. There's an entrance fee for going in as well. But just making this quick detour, I hope that palm trees are not obscuring your view of it. But that is the House of the Colonels, because the military ruler of the island had the title of Colonel. This is not the village where I live, but it is the village to which my kids have done their schooling. The high school, can't just see it from here, it's right behind us. The infant junior school will drive past shortly. My kids have just gone to the UK last week to carry on their schooling, to do their A-levels. Actually, academically, there's 1 year between my two, but because Daniel repeated a year, they've ended up in the same year academically. So they're both starting their A-levels at the same time. It is a wonderful place for holidays. You look at the climate. We've got maybe 365 days of the year. Probably 330 of those days are good for going to the beach. You can be unlucky and come here in the winter months and hit a full week of cold wind, cloud and maybe some rain. And there might be individual days like that throughout the other parts of the winter as well. But it's a fantastic climate for tourism. We've got the longest beaches of the Canary Islands, probably the best beaches of the Canary Islands, possibly some of the best beaches of the Atlantic Ocean. It's a wonderful place for relaxing, for detaching, getting away from the stress of the other 50 weeks of the year. That's why people come on holiday into Fuerteventura and have a wonderful time. Great place for relaxing. Do you think young people want that? No. And my kids, of course, they've been to the UK plenty of times on holidays with us. They've seen the big cities. We've taken them into Leeds and Manchester, and Jane's gone to London with the kids to see the big rock music concerts. And of course my two, they want some of that. They don't want what Fuerteventura mostly has to offer. My kids do surfing. You can't do much of that in Shrewsbury, which is where they've gone. But they'll be back at Christmas probably, and they'll go surfing quite a lot, I'm sure, when they're back at Christmas. But apart from the surfing, Fuerteventura doesn't offer a great deal that young people want. They want the big cities with all the opportunities for, well, hopefully shopping where somebody else pays for, at least window shopping. They want the music concerts, they want the nightlife, and things like that are just not available in Fuerteventura. So it doesn't surprise me that my two wanted to go to the UK. Now the park has been built around it, so no longer can water drain into it. But there's 3 more of these water tank collection tanks just on the left hand side of the track that we're about to drive down. This little mound of earth that's beginning here on the left is nothing to do with agriculture. It's for guiding all the water draining off these plains on our left. Many square kilometres of land on our left. That water was draining down here, so these mounds of earth were to guide the water into the water tanks that are on our left here. There are 3 floors to this watchtower. You enter on the middle floor. From the open air top floor, you get the best views, of course, and the dungeon is on the ground floor. It's usually a little...
If you're going up onto the top floor, there is a low wall around the top floor, but I just use the word low. Take that piece of advice, it's not impossible to topple over the edge.
I'm going to try though. See it coming down could be fun.
Backwards marrying is the way to do that.
Yeah. It's best. Sorry about the speed, folks. Sea breezes. It's nice, isn't it?
Sure. Bajamos y subimos.
Esta playa de Corraletjo es la de aquí delante, la que es la de la concha. La playa de los lagos está. Y esta es esta que dices. No, esto es los cotillos. Eso es Corraletjo. El Corraletjo, esto yo ya bueno. Vale. Bueno, pues
Para mí no hay que darme
¿Quieres publicidad?
Make it look like an accident on my road. Okay, everybody's using it.
Better be down there.
More
breeze.
It's nice to have the shade. How can there be not any breeze here?
Well, that's because the breeze is in the corner.
That's bird's eye, yeah, nice soft white.
No S at the end, but turn the C into an S sound. And my first experience of this was a bus company in Gran Canaria called Mas Palomas Bus. But for the islanders, it's Mapalomable. Although actually the word bus they don't use. The traditional word for a bus in Spanish, the proper word is an autobus. But in the Canaries they use a word which is common in various South American countries, a wawa. G-U-A, wawa. I think it's a word that's originated in Venezuela, but it's used in Cuba as well.
Yes.
Very common in the Canary Islands.
So for those who don't have a sense of direction, you have to know how to say "Donde está la guagua?"
I remember meeting a Catalan that first arrived in Fuerteventura, and of course Catalan, he spoke both Catalan and Castilian Spanish, and he said when he first came here he thought he was going deaf because half the words were missing whenever he listened to anybody. It's just the way that they tend to swallow various syllables and certainly the S sound.
Coca-Cola Light, yo.
Yes. Just sat down and had to stand up again.
Fanta de limón, la señora.
Possibly. It certainly feels very hot and muggy, but I was in the inland areas yesterday all day where it was hot and dry, but it was still very, very hot. Here we're at the coast where you
Yeah.
so it make me feel hot.
And another one. Here.
That's it.
Okay.
I was doing a full island tour in French yesterday.
Get onto the speech, but that's about it.
Right, thank you. Gracias, ciao. They